shake the bottom. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Instagram. Good morning, YouTube. And good morning, Facebook. Oh my goodness. Thank you guys so much. I enjoy watching the intro video. I never know what Paula's going to put in there. And I love all the videos from Michelle Showalter, who is also joining us on Facebook. Michelle, your kids holding the quilt. I'm hoping kids, grandkids, doesn't matter. They were so stinking cute when they were kicking the bottom of the quilt. Oh my goodness. All right. Good morning, everybody. I am actually excited to actually see comments this week. So I have a funny story. I did the entire show last week and the comments were not refreshing on my screen. So I literally thought I was talking for an hour to nobody. So I sincerely apologize if you asked me a question or gave me feedback or had a shout out. But yeah, I can actually see you guys talking to me this week. So this is fantastic. We can have a two-way conversation instead of me just talking to a screen. Oh, Greta Sobel, she saw the podcast last night. Yahoo! We're going to talk about that in just a second. Michelle is saying those were her grandkids. They were stinking cute in the way they had to stand on the wall so it'd be long enough to see the quilt. I love all about it. Good morning from Kentucky. You guys, I am, the weather here in St. Louis, we are in what they call the second stage of hot summer. And so we had fake fall for a minute where we thought the weather's coming down. Okay, it's time to get out all of our pumpkin spice and all of our apples and all of our leaves. And then it came swinging back. And we've been in the 90s all week here. And the soccer practice I had last night, I mean, we were all just drenched. It is welcome to St. Louis. This is how it works here. All right. We've got a great show today. We're going to talk about National Jelly Roll Day, which is happening this Saturday. And so I am going to show you guys, and we're going to talk all about jelly rolls and give you some tips and some tricks. And I get to show you one of the projects I made on National Jelly Roll Day a couple years ago. And I'm hoping you guys will gather and join us and sew those jelly rolls that you've been stashing in your collection and looking for a good opportunity to sew them together. All right, so we're going to start, as we always do, with questions submitted by you guys. Go to cottoncuts.com/live to submit a question. They're here. I don't see them ahead of time. Paula likes to keep me on my toes, and so we will see where we go. I see a lot of you guys. It's hot in Florida too, Cheryl. I can imagine. If it's hot here and it's as humid as it's been, it is probably really warm in Florida and muggy in Arizona. Charlene, I grew up in Arizona. Muggy is not a word I usually describe in Arizona, so that is definitely an anomaly. Let's see here. Jana has a question. We're going to pin that and come back in just a minute. Paula, can you grab Jana's question and we'll come back to your question after the podcast when we talk about the podcast. All right. So the first question comes to us from Sarah Mitchell from Portland, Oregon. Sarah asks, do you see this question? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Paula starts laughing. So clearly, Jana, you saw your question. So Sarah, Portland, Oregon asks, I'm working on my first large quilt, a queen size. Congratulations, Sarah. That's a big one. And I'm getting overwhelmed by the sheer size of it. My dining room table isn't big enough for basting, and I'm worried about keeping everything square and managing all that fabric. Do you have any tips for tackling big quilts without losing your sanity? Okay, so the first tip I have for long quilts is start a weightlifting regime. So that way you can build up big biceps and arm muscles because you are going to need them to wrangle this quilt around your house and around your sewing machine. All right. All of that aside. So I think once you get past a twin size, that's when you really have to have a strategy and a game of attack on basing that quilt in order to hold it together and to make sure that as you're feeding it through your machine, the layers don't slip and that you can cleanly get it through your machine and quilt it in a nice segmented fashion. So the first thing is basting, right? And so the basting is the foundation for how you're going to make this quilt look fantastic when you quilt it all together. And so I know dining room tables are not big enough. It was not big enough for my Aloha quilt. And so finding a fantastic big open floor space in your house, pushing furniture against the walls. If you're concerned about doing it on carpet versus on a hardwood flooring surface, you can definitely put a sheet down so that way you don't transfer anything from the carpet into your quilt. you would consider using spray basting. I was not a big fan of spray basting. I thought this was something that was super hard, super complicated, and actually wouldn't work. Spray basting has changed the way I quilt my quilts because it puts them together. And once I stick them, if it's wrong, I can just lift it and I can re-stick it. And if it's wrong again, I can lift it and re-stick it. And once I'm happy, then I can pin it and have confidence that my pins aren't going to introduce wrinkles and kerfluffles later. The spray basting as a first layer is a game changer for me. Now I'm going to talk about kind of some trends, some hacks, some things that I've seen when it comes to basting big quilts. I'm going to caution you to use these, to test them, and to then, take kind of the best from all of them. I've heard of this pool noodle technique. So you go to a pool supply store and you get pool noodles and you wrap your quilt top around it and you wrap your batting around it. And then that way, when you unroll it, everything is nice and flat as you're creating your sandwich. I've heard pool noodles work for this function. I've also heard that pool noodles can work for actually wrapping up your sandwich. So that way, when you're feeding them through the machine, it keeps all of your rolls together. And most generally, pool noodles are going to be long enough to be able to keep everything rolled nice and tightly together, as opposed to what I usually do, which is get like a big giant clamp and clamp them. So pool noodles are supposed to be a fantastic small investment in order to be able to get everything rolled, everything unrolled flatly, and everything as perfectly sandwiched as possible. Krista Watson is, she's a friend of the show. We've interviewed Krista before. And so Krista has some tutorials about basting quilts, both on a wall, on a design wall, where she puts them up on the wall and she layers all three together. And then she's able to pin them on a wall on a large surface. But she also had one, and it came to me as a reel in my feed. And I was like, I pinned it, I saved it, and this is something I'm going to do. But she has a table that she has outside. So she has plenty of open surface, and she's, of course, protected it so nothing gets dirty. And she's able to create her sandwich by just sliding these different layers across her table. And she's able to get a perfectly sandwiched quilt. So it's one of those, Krista does some fantastic shortcuts for home quilters who are trying to quilt longer quilts. And so I would definitely suggest searching up her tips and her tricks. And then I've also heard, and this is a service I have not used, but there are quilt shops and there are long armors that will baste your quilts as a service for you. And so you can give them your 3 layers. They have the equipment, the space, the professional processes. They can actually baste your quilt, and that is a service that they can provide for you. They will, of course, charge you for it because it is a service, but it is a fantastic way to get that basting in a scenario where you might be in an apartment where you don't have access to a larger surface and you can't necessarily go outside. I would just, inquire about that. That is something new that has popped up as long arming pricing has become so expensive. Basting has become a sub-service that can be provided to you. So definitely inquire where you can. And then, of course, from your sanity, Sarah, depending on how much you enjoy this process, you can just outsource it to a long armor in general and then save yourself some of the stress. But if you want that pride of being able to finish a large quilt on your home sewing machine, definitely look on the YouTubes, look on the Instagram. You'll find lots of tips and tricks on how to sew, how to be able to piece them together. I also know people who do quilt as you go when they get to a big quilt. One of our Toby Knits, she's an ambassador for Cotton Cuts. She actually did a PMQ that she quilted as she went, so that way she could sew it on her home sewing machine. She has a whole tutorial on that. That is unfortunately the piecing phase. So Sarah, it sounds like you're past that phase. This is definitely something to be looking at for future quilts, where you can actually quilt a row and then quilt a row and then attach them all together. Good morning, everybody. I'm seeing a yes for pool noodles. I am seeing Southern California. Good morning. Good morning. Greta's talking about werewolf. We're going to come back to that werewolf. All right. Let me see. I had a comment here on Instagram I did not want to lose. When did National Jelly Roll Day start? I'm so happy our local quilt shop in Alberta is participating. So Jelly Roll Day, I think it's going on 10 or 15 years now. We're going to talk about the origin of the day and how Moto created it and all that stuff in a minute. But I think we're going in about 15 years or so of that. All right, Sarah, I think that is it. If anyone else has any tips or tricks on how to home quilt a large quilt, please put them in the comments where you are, and let's help Sarah out. Let's help her keep her sanity. So she definitely wants to keep going on this project. Good morning, MD Whiskey 4117 from Maryland. All right. Next question comes to us from Michelle Chen from Tucson, Arizona. I love Tucson. I actually grew up in Arizona. That's fantastic. Alan is saying hello in St. Louis. Good morning. Michelle writes, I keep reading about the importance of pressing versus ironing and quilting, but I honestly don't understand the difference. Am I really going to ruin my quilt if I just run the iron back and forth like I do with my clothes? Also, should I be using steam or not? Okay, so let's talk about ironing versus pressing. Paula, do we have the travel iron here somewhere? I'm gonna see if we can, if not, then I can just talk about this. So ironing versus pressing. These sound like, going back to my middle school ELA English days, it sounds like they're synonyms. Ironing and pressing feel like the same thing and they're interchangeable. And it wasn't until about maybe 10 to 15 years that in the quilting world, they became different and nuanced. And so ironing and pressing are considered two very different actions in the quilting space. So when you are ironing, say you're ironing a piece of apparel and you're pressing it along, and I've done this before, right? You got the steam out, I'm pressing a shirt and I'm just going to iron it back and forth. I'm just trying to get gross wrinkles out. It is a finished garment. Ironing is continuously pressing with heat on the surface and sometimes with the application of steam. What happens when we get to quilting is those surfaces are not an entirely clean piece of fabric. It is not an unbroken piece of fabric like you would typically find in apparel. It is something that it does, because of the seams we stitch into it, it is bumpy. And so it is going to have surfaces that if you just run your iron along the front of a quilt or any of your piecing, it's going to hitch, it's going to catch, and it has the potential to stretch and distort all of the loving seams that you have created in these quilts. Now, depending on your personal preference, you might be okay just running your iron lightly over it. Haha, all right, we do have an iron. All right, thank you, Paula. You're fantastic. All right. So you might be okay just absolutely running the iron over, and that edge of that iron catching your stitch seams and possibly introducing distortion and air. That is completely up to you if you're willing to accept those minor distortions. However, if holding a crisp seam is important to you and retaining the seam allowance that you've stitched into your project, you need to press. And so what it means to press with your iron is actually just lift, hold for a period of time, lift up, move it slightly over, press and hold. Slightly over, press and hold. So that way you're minimizing the friction and stretching that you're creating by dragging your iron over the top of your seams. Now, I know that this idea of pressing and holding, it is probably a carryover from people who multi-craft and who use crickets, because whenever you're doing vinyl transfer, it is definitely a lift and press type motion. And someone did it in quilting, and so it became popular, this lifting and pressing. It all depends on how particular you are about that steam, the seams that you've created. When it comes to steam, I've talked about this frequently. I don't have any steam in my iron at the house. When I am quilting, it is all just heat. I found when I did quilts, and I'm going to show you my jelly roll quilt that I created. When I did quilts like this, I found that steam, especially on bias edges and on edges that might not necessarily be square, stretched a lot more. And I would get frustrated at how things wouldn't line up at the end, especially when I was sewing a lot of small pieces together. And so I have made a commitment to not use any steam in my home iron. Here in the shop, we actually have steam in our irons here. However, we have to continually clean them, because depending on the water you use and depending on how frequently you use it, sometimes rust can build up in your iron. And I found rust building in my iron at the house, and I chose not to use steam because I didn't want to have white fabric that would have rust stains on it. So make sure you're cleaning your iron. Make sure that you're using distilled water. If you have to use tap water, there is not going to be quilt police. It's going to come and tell you not to use that. It just means that you run the risk of potentially building up sediment and rust inside your iron that could transfer to your fabric. If you were okay with that, then definitely use whatever type of water you would like. All right. Michelle is saying great ironing tips. I think that these are just tips and tricks, right? Take them with what you will. If you take one of these and use it at home, then congratulations, you've gotten incredible value from the show this morning. Josie's asking, when quilting on your own, would you start in the center or just start in the corner left to right? So Josie, I think it depends on the pattern of quilting that you're using. I know for me, if I'm doing straight line stitching across my quilt, I go one direction, I rotate it, I go the other direction, I rotate it, I go one direction, and it depends on how I am quilting it. But in that situation, I found if I go in the same direction in my straight stitch, it'll actually pull the top and I lose all the basting that I put into it. So it depends on the pattern. It depends on how closely you're quilting. So the right answer is it depends. It also depends on how much you want to finagle and struggle with your quilt and your machine and the throat of your machine, how big the throat of your machine actually is. But Josie, I think it depends on the pattern. It depends on how densely you're quilting as well. Let's see here. Alan's saying iron instructions not to use distilled water. So definitely follow the instructions with your iron. It depends on where you are and how hard the tap water is where you are. Where I grew up in Arizona, we had water softener, which added a lot of things that could actually catch in the water in the iron. And so in that case, we used distilled water because it was better than the tap water we had. So it depends on where you are, the quality of water you're using. If you have no other options, then use what you have, but depends on your iron too, and how frequently you use your iron and how long you leave the water in there. Okay, are we ready to, okay, I think we're ready to go on from ironing. Ironing versus pressing. So I think that's just important to know. And depending on who you're talking to and how committed they are to ironing versus pressing, they will definitely catch you if you use the wrong word. So just know that exists, there's a subtle difference between that in the quilting space. Let's see here. And I believe that depending on how I'm quilting, if I do catch that, it is probably not going to stretch. Let's see here. Angela uses reverse osmosis water. She hasn't had any problems. That is another fantastic suggestion. All right, so now we're going to transition into what is happening in the shop this week. So it is all about projects. So the first thing is we shipped our Modern Maker boxes this week. As a quick refresher, for those of you that don't know, Modern Maker is 3 1-yard coordinating cuts of a modern collection. I have them here because the color palette here, I know we get stuck into thinking modern is a lot of pinks and a lot of floral. But this month, we found this awesome collection that is a lot of navies and it's a lot of very fall browns as well. I want to show you guys this is like cute little deer here, which are super fun and fantastic. And then we also have that same print in a brown palette. So you don't know which one of these you're going to get. You're just going to get one of these 3. And those Modern Makers are out the door. We hope that they are bringing you joy. We also last week shipped our Javas, which I want to show you the October Java. The October Java is always one of my favorite Javas. These are 12 coordinated batiks. It is Halloween themed. I always love the intersection of fall and Halloween that comes into this Java. So make sure you get your order in for your October so you don't miss out on these lovelies. Linda Wimple is saying that she doesn't put water in her iron. She uses a spritz bottle. That is something that has definitely emerged in the past 10 years or so. And I have heard that the best spritz bottles to use are those that you can find at a Sally's Beauty Supply that are commonly used by salons because they have the finest, most dispersed mist. That is another hot tip. Hopefully you can find those. All right. We also shipped our cuddle books this past week. And so I want to take a moment and just kind of hinge on cuddle books for a minute. When we were in Sonoma at the retreat, the shirt I am wearing, I had the pleasure of meeting Lynn. And so Lynn has been a Cuddle Books member for a couple months, but she's had a block where she could not finish a Cuddle book. And so I was able to work with Lynn and get her cuddle book made, put all the ribbons in it. And in one night, she was able to make her first cuddle book. Oh, and here, Paula just happens to have one handy for me. This is her cuddle book, right? Or this is an example of a cuddle book. And so it is a panel, a pre-printed panel that has the ribbons and it has the crinkle. And so I was able to work with Lynn and she was able to make her first cuddle book in a couple hours and she's gone home and she has just sewed up a storm. They are so much fun. Once you get past the hurdle of how to make them, they get so much easier to make and they are so much easier to gift and to share love and to share joy. Which brings me to Savannah. Savannah is on our team. And so Savannah had a family gathering this past weekend. And all the little kids could not get enough of the cuddle books that Savannah has been making. And they were like constantly coming to her, sitting on her lap, read us again, read it again, Auntie, read it again. It was, so there it is. Oh, holy cow. Here we go. Thank you, Paula. There she is. This is Savannah. And she is just reading. And they just kept picking up the book and wanting to read it again and loved all the ribbons and loved all the work that Savannah put into it. And here's a family gathering where, I mean, these kids could be on screens. They could be watching any other show. And here they are choosing to read the books with their auntie. All right. Linda's saying her grandson loves the cuddle books. They are just a quick little gift just to bring a little bit of joy. Brings me so much joy as well. All right. We're going to talk about the Island Hopping Mystery 5.0. So this is our second quarterly mystery with the Mystery 5.0 program. It is island hopping. We've talked about this a lot. The team is actively cutting these kits now. We are putting them in packaging. We're getting them all labeled up. I know you guys like these numbers. So when we've die cut island hopping, there are over 800 pre-cut pieces in island hopping this time. Over 800, including half rectangle triangles, which is new for cotton cuts, but it is something that it will be new for you guys as well. We just added all these colorways to the website. So every colorway that's on the website right now is going to be a pre-cut kit, meaning we're going to cut 800 pieces of all of those kits. There will be as many as 10 kits up to maybe 30 kits of each one. So if there is one that you love, make sure that you pay attention to the dates that we're going to give you on when signups happen, because we have so few of them, because these fabrics are so niche, because this design is very complicated. I'm gonna be very transparent with you guys. This design is very complicated to get fabrics that make it look fascinating and make it look awesome. And it is going to be a struggle for other shops to also get into this holiday theme with this design. But we've put in a ton of work to make sure that these colorways all work and will produce the most amazing quilt at the end of the day. We've been naming these colorways. If you've in our Mystery 5.0 Cotton Cuts Facebook group, you will see them, and they are there. These kits are going to go on sale on October 1st. If you go to the website, which Paula has up now, or she will in a second, if you go to cottoncuts.com and go to Mystery 5.0, there's a place for you to enter your email to get early access. If you submitted it for Aloha, you will also be on the island hopping email list. You get a couple hours early access. Yes, we'll have 2 hours. We'll have more information on that when we talk about it next week. And new for island hopping, we are going to have cut from the bolt kits. So these are fabrics that we designed up and we loved, but we don't have enough to make a pre-cut kit. So we're going to be doing yardage for those, just like a traditional quilt would have for a block of the month. We're going to have yardage of that. We will also have a special Creative Grids ruler that is made for cutting those half rectangle triangles. I know that for some quilters, half rectangle triangles are scary and terrifying because it's not a square. So those two pieces are not the same. There's actually a left and a right side to it. So we have a Creative Grids ruler to help make sure that those cuts are on track. If it comes off our die, you don't have to worry about that. The cuts are going to be on track for us. But we have the rulers just in case you want to give it a whirl. And I'm going to encourage everyone, when you have these half rectangle triangles, just try it. We're going to make it as easy as possible for you. We'll have all the video tutorials to help you guys get them in the right place to make the design as awesome as it can be. We are also doing wide backs with island hopping like we did for Aloha, but we're adding pillow kits. So every time you have a wide back, you will also get a pillowcase kit to make 2 coordinating pillowcases. And so the pillowcases are going to be a body pillowcase with a coordinating sash of fabric and then a cuff for the pillow. You're going to get all of that to match your quilt, so that way you can use the pillowcases, or as I've been told by many quilters, use the pillowcases to store or gift your quilt in just in time for the holidays. That is all coming. A lot more details coming next week on that. And also, we do have a few kits left of Aloha. I think 2 colorways are completely sold out. So you can't get Ihi Rainbow or Kauwela anymore. We do have 3 other colorways on the website. If you've seen it and you love it, make sure you jump on it. Because if you participate in all 4 mysteries of Cotton Cuts, if you participate in Aloha, Island Hopping, in the next 2, you will get exclusive access to a 5th quilt that you can only participate in if you participate every quarter with us. So make sure that you're jumping on that. If you've joined late, if you saw the quilts and you're hopping over here to see what else we've got going on, make sure that you are getting in on Aloha so you don't miss out on that 5th bonus quilt. Oh, hey. All right. There we go. I think Paula's just going to pop photos up every now and then. She's going to keep me on my toes this morning. I have not had any coffee, so let's see how this goes. So this is it's Nevermore from Andover. It is Kona Eclipse is the name of the colorway. When we designed this on up, this was my favorite of all of them. I know it reads as Halloween, but it reads also as fall, because once you cut the fabrics up into those 2-inch strips like we did, it reads as fall. It also can be very Halloween as well. Crystal's asking, can you hand piece Mystery 5.0? You absolutely can. It is a lot of pieces. Like I said, it's 800 for island hopping. It is 1,000 for Aloha. So make sure that if you are hand piecing, you've got lots of time. Perhaps you're like me and you spend lots of time at a cross country meet or at a swim meet or at a track meet. That is a fantastic use of time. Just hand sew these quilts. Under the Sea, gosh, we're just so many projects going on. So Under the Sea, Clue 3 will ship next Friday, the 26th. So what that means is that our signups for Under the Sea will officially close next Friday. We're going to close all signups. We're going to move all of those signups into the vault because we're getting ready for our next mystery. And I might as well kind of share that we've got those colorways already cooking. I did a final design review yesterday with Sheila. So we're already moving ahead into the next mystery, if you guys can believe it. And when I saw the design, this next one that we're signing up for is going to keep you guys guessing. It is structured differently than any of our previous puzzle mystery quilts. You're going to get parts in clue 10 that are going to distract you from the final design. And it is truly going to be a mystery until the very end for the next one. A lot more coming up on it. I'm not going to tell them the theme yet. We're not going to confuse. Listen, Paula's over here. What's the theme? No, I will tell you guys that later. That is a December conversation, not a September conversation. All right, so we're going to add a new section to our weekly lives because we have a lot of announcements coming up. And so I want to make sure that you guys have all the things that are going on and don't miss out on anything, because in today's world, there's a lot of stuff on Facebook. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube. We want to make sure that you're able to get all of the information. Michelle Showalter wants the theme. We'll put that on. Give me like a couple weeks on that, Michelle. I know what the theme is. I'm not ready to share the theme yet. All right. So let's see. Tonight we're having our monthly Cotton Cuts Society sew-in at 7 o'clock Central. This is fantastic. This is a great group of folks that has been gathering and sewing literally anything cotton cuts. So if you're working on Mystery 5.0, if you're working on a retreat, if you're working on Tim Holtz, if you're working on Puzzle Mystery Quilt, pop on at 7 o'clock. I think the host tonight's going to be Carrie. Carrie, you're hosting tonight. Yes. Carrie is so much fun. Every time Carrie hosts, I get a series of emails the next day about how much they love Carrie. Carrie's hosting from Cotton Cuts tonight. And so it's just a fun opportunity to come and hang out. Everyone is welcome. All the information is on our Cotton Cuts Facebook website as well. Last night, we had the Sew Off Kilter podcast. I was interviewed by friends of the show, Becca and Ian. We had a lovely, we'll call it a lovely cuppa. We had our quilts on us. We had a conversation. I got to talk about things that I don't normally talk about on the show. And they always start with, what did they call the first question, Paula? A spoiler alert. At which point they extracted out of me that I have a secret love of romantic fantasy books. And so thus the question that Gianna started with, which is vampire or werewolf, I think was the question. Yes, vampire or werewolf. So it's been a long time since I've read the Twilight series. And when I read the Twilight series, I was a werewolf. However, now I've moved on and I am all in the Sarah Moss universe. And so I do a lot of fairies, but I'm reading a vampire book now. So I guess I'm an equal opportunity fantasy book reader. So yes, if you guys have any recommendations, if you are as crazy about this as I am, definitely leave some suggestions. I'm always looking for good books to read. Let's see here. Ian and Becca, that podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen. I feel like that was like an advertisement, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and they also have a YouTube channel. So if you're a YouTuber, you can definitely watch the podcast. There's a video that goes along with it as well. And so I show some quilts. I show some samples of things that we have here in the shop as well. And we've been getting questions about this, so I'm so excited to start talking about Rose's Holiday Your Way. So every year, Cotton Cuts participates and we sponsor Rose's Holiday Your Way. As we learned, it's okay, Danelle, I'm not worried that you're late. You know, you're totally fine. You can go back and watch the early sections. I am just happy that you are here. All right, so Rosa, as we learned last week, Rosa is the name of our logo, and every year we do a Holiday Your Way. So I know a lot of companies do like a Christmas or a New Year's. We like to make it such that you can celebrate in December however you choose to celebrate. Whatever you're counting down to, we want to make sure that we have something that you will love. So we will have a lot more on Rose's Holiday Way, including new things coming up in the second week in October. So be sure to watch those live shows. I will have samples. We will have sneak peeks. It is going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you stay tuned till then. Let's see here. I'm getting a suggestion for Allie Hazelwood's Bride, and it has both. Okay, now you have me intrigued. Okay. All right. Danelle has posted a pumpkin with an exclamation point. I guess, Danelle, I love emojis. We will have to see how that goes. National Jelly Roll Day. All right. So we're going to talk about Jelly Roll days. Jelly Roll Day is coming up on Saturday. And so for those of you, I want to do a quick recap as to what exactly a Jelly Roll is. So that way everyone has a foundation. So this is kind of the OG version of a Jelly Roll. Moda trademarked the name Jelly Roll. Good for them, bad for everybody else, because now it just is confusing to all of us what actually a Jelly Roll is. So Moda is a sponsor of Jelly Roll Day. It is a strip pack that looks something like this. It can also look like this. Sometimes they're wrapped in plastic. Sometimes they're tied with a ribbon. Generally what it is, it's 2.5-inch strips, right? So you can actually measure them. Your finger's about 3 inches. So you know it's 2.5 if it's almost your full length of your finger. They are generally a single collection, and they are a variety of prints from the same collection. And so this is what defines a Jelly Roll. Now, Dominic and I did a whole show on pre-cuts earlier this summer. And one of the first lessons that we taught folks when you're looking at any sort of pre-cut is to read the label. Generally, it's all the fabrics from a collection. As collections get smaller and there are less fabrics in them, sometimes you get 2 of fabrics in the collection. Sometimes it's 40 print. This one's 40 pieces. This one here is 40 pieces as well. Sometimes they can be as few as 24 pieces, and sometimes they can be as many as 42 or 44. Make sure you're reading your labels when you're looking at your Jelly Rolls. That's important. They can be different by manufacturer because there is no one size to fit them all. Make sure that you're looking at it. And generally, the rule is that it's all from the same collection. I actually really like this one. I'm holding it up. I'm getting lots of positive comments about Hey Pumpkin. This is one of our Mystery 5.0 colorways, guys, is we're actually using this Hey Pumpkin collection. So if you like these fabrics and think they're cute, definitely go over to the Mystery 5.0 page for island hopping. All right. So fabric strips like this have been used for a long time. This was a common way to, rip up a shirt. You could take a shirt and you could rip it up and it would make a strip because it was ripped straight of grain, and you could use them in a quilt very easily before the days of rotary cutters and machines that could repeatedly cut them like this. The genius is that it takes all the coordinating work out of fabric selection. So instead of finding this collection in a quilt shop, hoping the shop has all 40 prints of it, cutting has to be a 1/4 yard or a 1/2 yard, and then cutting it into 2.5-inch strips yourself, you can just buy this off the shelf and get all the fabrics that you want in one fell swoop. It is efficient, it saves you money, and you can actually just get to sewing with these in your stash versus all the work of hoping to find them all. And I don't know about you guys, but when I've seen that quilt on display and I want to get the whole collection, ultimately they're missing one fabric. It happens. And then you have to find another shop or find it online. Jelly Roll takes all that legwork out of the equation because it puts all of those fabrics together in one place. All right. And of course you don't have to cut it because it's all cut for you. So what are some of the projects that you can make with the Jelly Roll? At its simplest sense, you can use it as a strip. And so really any pattern that has strips in it can be used with a Jelly Roll. So at its basic level, any sort of rail fence pattern, you can take the strips, sew them together, make nice strips, cut them, rotate them, and before you know it, you've got a lot of movement. We saw a version of this in Dawn's scrappy quilt a couple weeks ago, where she sewed strips together, and simply by taking 2 or 3 strips, sewing them together, rotating. Before you know it, you have a quilt that's very visually interesting. It has movement, and it all starts with strips that are stitched together. Log cabin and courthouse steps. Pop quiz. Who can tell me the difference between a log cabin and a courthouse step quilt? They are sewed very similarly, but have 2 very different visual effects. So there's classic log cabin and there's courthouse steps. And so they're both sewn by sewing logs, which are strips outward from a center. So you sew a log and then you sew a log, and before you know it, you have a design. I think it's like 28 seconds for the delay to get. So I'm going to wait before I tell you guys the difference between classic and courthouse. Traditional blocks never go out of style. And so because they can be made with modern fabrics, because they can be made with classic fabrics, because they can be made with traditional fabrics, these traditional blocks are great because they can be stitched, and all sorts of different orientations. So Terry says color placement. Yes, it is color placement. It is also the order in which the logs are placed as well. Right, so in a log cabin, you're sewing them in a rotation. In a courthouse step, it's top, bottom, left, right, top, bottom, left, right, top, bottom, left, right. And it is also the color placement as well. There's color choice variability is there. Yes, Jana Elliott, courthouse steps has logs of the same size. So courthouse steps is left, right, top, bottom, left, right, top, bottom, left, right, top, bottom, versus a log cabin, which is building in a rotary fashion. All right. One of the things that has really grown out of Jelly Roll Day, National Sew a Jelly Roll Day, is this concept of a Jelly Roll race quilt. So we have a lot of quilt shops that are hosting Jelly Roll days in their shop. If you have one near you, reach out. I almost guarantee they're going to have some measure of a Jelly Roll project. And Jelly Roll race is something that has become kind of a staple of the day. And so that is, you take the Jelly Roll and you sew all of your strips end to end to end to end to end. So you literally just sit at your machine, you're going to chain piece them, and you're going to sew them end to end to end. Then depending on the quilt shop that's hosting you, you're going to cut them at different increments. So you fold them in half, cut it, fold it in half, cut it, fold it in half, cut it, fold it in half, cut it, and then you just stitch all your strips together. And the intention is that you can take a Jelly Roll and you can make a throw quilt in a day in a class with a group of people where you're not going to be too distracted by a constricting pattern over the course of the day. It's very simple. Sew together, cut, 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 sew together. And before you know it, you've got a fantastically coordinated throw quilt. That is a fun project. If you have never done that, please, please, please reach out and see if you can do it. It's fun. It's engaging, and it's a good way to sew together. Now, sometimes the Jelly Roll is not enough to make a finished quilt. So what do you do then? I mean, first answer is get 2 Jelly Rolls and you can make a bigger quilt. Generally, 1 Jelly Roll by itself is going to give you about 2.5 yards of fabric, and it's enough to make a generous lap quilt or a small throw. If you want something bigger than that, you can buy a second one. Just double it. Oh, I think we have one here. Yeah, just double it. Okay, so you can just get 2, and then I'll make something that's bigger. You can also consider in your stash mixing it with another Jelly Roll. And so when you do that, there's some considerations. If you, like, I would not suggest this. As we're talking about mixing Jelly Rolls, this is not one that I would mix together. But you can very seamlessly mix them together if they are of the same color, tone, and hue, and they would play nicely together. There are designers like Tula Pink, which we're going to see here in a minute, who generally like to keep their fabric so they can coordinate together. So you could take 2 different Tula Pink collections and mix them together without any pause or hesitation. There is also a school of thought about taking fabrics that are 2 very divergent, one perhaps light and one perhaps dark, and being able to mix those together. So that way your eye has movement as it moves throughout the finished quilt between a light and a dark. Kaffe is a fantastic print to do this with, because Kaffe, in their collections, they would have a bright, on fire, a very hot collection, and then a very cool collection. That's where you get the blues and the purples versus the red, orange, and yellows. And so in that situation, having a strip pack that's different depending on your pattern would actually make those colors work very smoothly together to give a high amount of contrast throughout whatever pattern you choose. All right. Then I'm going to show you a quilt where you can take a Jelly Roll and mix it with background fabric to make it bigger. And so in general, if you're getting, you can get solids as a Jelly Roll. And so you would want to use about the same amount of background fabric as you have in your Jelly Roll. So that way it's balanced. So that way the Jelly Roll doesn't become too diffuse in the finished design. It doesn't become too dissolved into the background, but then it also doesn't overtake the solid, and your eye doesn't have time to rest at the background fabric like it should, like it could in a potential design. So let me show you my Jelly Roll day quilt. So I made this about 4 years ago, and I was all gung-ho. I had a Jelly Roll that I had got from Missouri Star, and I had time. There was nothing going on, which a fall Saturday, nothing going on in my house is a big deal. And I had a Lone Star design. I think I've showed you guys this quilt before, but I had a Lone Star design that I had a pattern from, and the pattern said words that I will never forget. It said Jelly Roll friendly. It didn't say Jelly Roll pattern. It said Jelly Roll friendly. And I was like, I got a Jelly Roll. I've been wanting to make this pattern for a long time. I have a day. I am going to get this quilt top done. And so I made a Lone Star Jelly Roll quilt with a Tula Pink fabric. And I learned that jelly roll friendly means it might work with a jelly roll, but it might not work with a jelly roll. And so as I made this Lone Stars have 2, 4, 6, 8 points. I was able to get 6 points with the jelly roll I had. And thankfully I had enough Tula Pink in my stash. I was able to make the 2 other points in order to make the quilt done. And since it was jelly roll friendly, I had odds and ends and parts and pieces left over. So I pieced the back of this quilt. So I'm going to show you guys on the show a potential jelly roll quilt. And I'll get Paula to get some photos and she'll post them online because it's a nice sunny day here, so we can do that. And so here is the Lone Star quilt that I made. I'm going to hold it over my face so you guys can't necessarily hear me. But this is a jelly roll friendly quilt. And so the reason why this is friendly is that the width of this strip is 2.5 inches. And as you can see, it is all coordinating fabric. And I put it in a gradation such that this was my background fabric that I chose to offset it to separate the reds and purples from the blues and the greens. And so you can see these are my points that I was actually able to get out of the jelly roll. And then I added these background fabrics, which is also another Tula Pink coordinating fabric to match these fabrics to give it some background that wasn't just white or black. And so I'm going to say this, I encourage this all the time. Your background doesn't have to be white or black. It doesn't even have to be gray. In this case, I leaned into what Giuseppe told me, which was you can use purple as a background. And so I offset my Lone Star with the purple. It looks blue on the camera, guys. I promise you it's purple. You'll see it in the photos when Paula takes them. And then what happened is I ran out of jelly roll. And so I was real sad about that because I only got not enough points. And so I had enough fabric in my stash that I actually made green and blue points. And so those are these fabrics that are here. And so my Lone Star has 2 points that are just a little different color. I was able to continue the background as a divider between them, but I've got greens and blues on this side as well. And you know what? This quilt goes to every soccer game we've been at since I had it finished and quilted. And my kids love it. And I always get so many compliments on it. And so there is, as I said on the podcast, we want to kind of beat ourselves up when there's mistakes or accidents like this. And I know that had I been in a different mindset, I might have been like, I only got 6 points and chucked this in a closet, but I wanted to get it done. And so I made this creative design choice. And when it's sitting on your lap, you can't necessarily see that 2 of the points are a different color than the rest. It just is what it is. And so I love it. I get so many compliments from it. And I learned so much from it, including my last point that I'm going to talk about before we go on to our questions. So the first thing we get asked a lot is, do you starch pre-cuts? This is my jelly roll. Do I starch it? And I'm going to tell you what I tell everyone, especially when we talk about puzzle mystery quilts. Don't starch this fabric. Please don't starch these pre-cuts at the point that they're already cut like this. Because if you starch them, it is just like ironing with steam, and it has the chance to introduce distortion, error, and variability into it. So in this case with my Lone Star, I did not starch my strips when I sewed them together. I did have a scarred experience where I sewed a whole bunch of these trapezoids and these diamonds, and I ended up with the parachute. I've talked about this a couple of times. And so I knew for this quilt, I was not going to starch the pre-cuts, but what I did is I starched all the bigger diamonds. As long as you starch your fabric all at the same stage, you can still piece it together and it'll be fine. So if you're getting yardage right from the quilt shop, starch every single piece you're going to use at the same stage. Don't starch this guy. Once this guy is cut, you need to stitch it together before you can starch it. But the best advice for starch is to starch at the same stage every single piece. So this would have been a disaster if I had starched all the pink and purples and not the blues and greens. It would have stretched, it would have distorted. None of my points would have matched up. You have to starch everything at the same stage. And I knew with all of these wonky diamonds, it was going to stretch if I didn't starch it at some point. And so I actually starched it when I had the big diamonds together before I assembled them into the radial that went all the way around. All right, I see a couple questions. 1 is a mistake, 2 is a design choice. Yes, Jan, I think the design choice intentionality, right? I mean, I love this quilt. It's not a mistake. It's just a design choice. And I had to make it work with the pattern I was given. And I hope that you guys are very mindful of pre-cut friendly versus a pre-cut pattern. So Terry, we do not have a long arm in our shop. I actually have a member of my guild here locally that does all of my long arming for my personal project. She is fantastic. I think my last piece of advice that I'm going to share with you guys is that you don't have to use a jelly roll as a strip. And I feel like once we get to this, we get the fabric, it's pretty, we want to use it as a strip. You can use this as a shortcut to cut squares, to cut shorter strips, to cut triangles out of this. You can use this as a shortcut to cut other very interesting shapes. I know the examples we gave you with courthouse steps and log cabin and a railroad fence. Those are all strip projects, but it doesn't have to be a strip project. In fact, I showed you one where I used strips and then subcut it into diamonds and made something very different than the actual jelly roll intended. So don't be afraid. Don't feel like a constraint of using a jelly roll is that it has to stay in strip form. All right. So I'm going to, before I get into our giveaway and more information about what's happening in the next 48 hours, I would like for you guys to just tell me, how many jelly rolls do you guys have in your stashes right now? Plus or minus 3 or 4. How many jelly rolls do you guys actually own that you could go to and grab and sew a project on Saturday? I will tell you, I actually don't buy very many jelly rolls. That's probably one of my dirty secrets. I think I probably have less than 3 at home, and those are ones that have been gifted to us. The kids like to get jelly rolls at guild meetings and at guild events. They like all the colors. So Lincoln and Dominic have their own stash of jelly rolls, and every now and then I pilfer one out. They've got some solids that have some pretty shortcut 2.5-inch strips. Okay, so I'm seeing 10-ish, 10, 2, a lot of restraint in the 2 guys. I am a big fan of them. What's that now? Gianna, did you say you have 40? Gianna, holy moly, Gianna, I love and appreciate your style, man. Let's see here. None. Not to shoe with it before now. Peggy, I agree. It's one of those, unless I have a purpose for a jelly roll, I'm not usually buying it. But over 20 from her jelly roll rug era. Yeah, jelly roll rugs were a big thing a while ago. Kim has 3 to 4. Bobby has 15 to 20. Kelly Parker has none. I love that. Catherine says she's not her favorite. She makes her own from Fat Quarters. I know, Catherine, I know you're a big Fat Quarter fan. You're a classic member. And so I get cutting it and having them fit for purpose. Let's see here. 12. Barbara Anderson, she wins. I have part of one. So Terry has part of one. Is it left over or is it, yeah. Janice says she won the jelly roll race. I guess she won the jelly roll race today. Jean Thompson has 15 to 25. I love all of those. That's fantastic. And I feel like we need the jelly roll day to give us inspiration, to give us the catalyst to push us off and get us to make something like it did for this quilt for me. Pinked edges. I didn't get a chance. Charlene talked about the pinked edges. A lot of these pre-cuts have pinked edges. If you are, this one is very subtle. I'm going to actually show you guys. Like it is a pinked edge, but it is very, very subtle. I'm going to show all the cameras here. And it's because they do that because of fraying and because of hairs and threads that might come if they don't pink the edges of these pre-cuts. And I know that can be super vexing as a quilter when you've got a pinked edge. It bothers me on charm packs more than anything because charm packs usually have a bigger peak and a valley, a bigger pinked edge than a jelly roll typically does. My suggestion when you're dealing with the pinked edges is be consistent. If you're measuring your 1/4 inch from the peak, make sure you always measure it from the peak. If you're measuring it from the valley, always measure it from the valley. If you're going to be super brave and go right in the middle, always measure your 1/4 inch from the middle. If all of that is too much vexing for you, use a ritter cutter, cut them off. Get them out of there. Make it a square edge if you need to. Usually, but this varies manufacturer to manufacturer, the dimension they give you is the whole fabric, not the pinked edge. If it bothers you that pinked edge is on there, just cut it off. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just there from a manufacturing perspective, because if they did not, you would have hairs and threads that would be just dirtying the surface. It doesn't look as visually appealing as it does if it's pinked. All right. So let's talk about what's going to happen the next 48 hours at Cotton Cuts. So starting tomorrow and for 48 hours, we're going to be giving away the Aloha pattern for free on cottoncuts.com with every $50 purchase. Now, why Aloha? Why the pattern? Why for free? So Aloha is actually a jelly roll friendly pattern. So if you have a jelly roll, and I feel like based upon the list of people that just posted a whole bunch of answers, I think you might have 1 or 2 that you might be able to borrow. But Aloha is a jelly roll friendly pattern. And so it is meant to be used with strips and then cutting strips into squares to make triangles and to make different edges to it. There is the Aloha pattern is one we would like for you to consider trying using this weekend. So for every $50 purchase in the shop, you're going to get the free pattern. It'll be a digital download. It'll come to you instantly. And so it is going to be different than our pre-cut kits. And so we've talked about this with a lot of the Mystery 5.0, that we're modifying our pre-cut kits to simplify patterns, to make them die cuttable, to make it easier to sew. So the pattern you're getting is a shop your stash. So if you have that jelly roll lying around and you want to shop your stash, you could make the Aloha pattern on Jelly Roll Saturday. If you don't have a jelly roll lying around, we have a ton of fabric in the shop that you can use to shop your stash and use with your pattern. It does not have to be any specific purchase. Any $50 in the shop will get you that free pattern, and it's Friday through Monday only. Let's see here. So the question that I have for you guys for hanging with me to the end of the show, find this video on Facebook, on YouTube, or Instagram, and leave a comment. I want to hear about your jelly roll superpower. So this could be, if you love jelly rolls, what is your real jelly roll superpower? Or what is your aspirational jelly roll superpower? Or perhaps your jelly roll superpower is that you've never sewn with a jelly roll because you don't have to, and you create your own jelly rolls. So what is your jelly roll superpower? And so let's see here. What's a special talent? Are you really good at winning races with jelly rolls? Are you really good at enabling people to use jelly rolls? I would say my superpower, I'm going to claim this one when it comes to jelly rolls, is that I can unroll and re-roll this guy. I know that's kind of lame, but I feel like once we untie that ribbon and we release the rubber band, it is just going to explode and become a chaos and a mess. But I am actually pretty good at using these jelly rolls and getting them back into a roll so it looks pretty. And it is actually, I've seen videos, guys. This is hand done. There is a person whose job is to offset all those strips, roll them, tie them with a rubber band, and tie the ribbon around it. It is done by hand. There is not a machine that does this. Janice says her superpower is definitely hoarding. Jelly rolls are great for scrappy bindings. I love that as well. And the Stripology ruler is a great way to get there as well if you have yardage cut of the fabrics. So drop a comment wherever you find this video. We're going to give away a $25 gift certificate to the Cotton Cut Shop, which is a fantastic thing to hold on to as we sign up for the next Mystery 5.0 and as we sign up for Rose's Holiday Your Way. So please do not miss out on leaving a comment. Superpower is leading how to use them more. I love that, Kristen. I would love to hear what your ideas are on how to use them more. Yeah, it's no joke to roll it up neatly. I think I got tired of having drawers of unrolled jelly rolls. And I feel like it's that ability to re-roll it that maybe prohibits some of us from unrolling it in the first place. All right, some quick reminders. Don't forget tonight's sew-in is at 7 o'clock. Don't forget, watch the Sew Off Kilter podcast. Don't forget to check out the colorways, and we will have early access for both Island Hopping and Rose's Holiday Your Way coming soon. What's Rose's Holiday Your Way? So that's a fantastic question, Michelle. Stay tuned. Rose's Holiday Your Way is our holiday program that will start at like the second week in October, October 8th. So we'll have a lot more on that coming up in future shows. Paula, did I miss anything? All right. Paula is saying no. I got the green thumb from the boss gang. So with that, I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. I hope you take at least one day, Saturday or Sunday, to sew a jelly roll. Perhaps there's that jelly roll you have and have never opened. Even getting it out and opening up, I will count as participating in National Sew a Jelly Roll Day. So getting it out, what's that? Oh, and Paula is saying, don't forget to eat a jelly roll. In her case, make sure it's gluten-free. So yes, don't forget there are jelly rolls to be had in both the food and the fabric variety. Let us not forget that at all. I actually saw, one of those videos came across my feed where like Jelly Roll, the musician, was learning that we call these jelly rolls too, and his facial expressions were hysterical, that quilters call these jelly rolls as well. All right, so I hope you guys get some sewing in. If not, take Saturday and just go look at your jelly rolls. Maybe think about projects you would want to make with them. I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend, and we will see you guys next week. Have a good day now. We'll see you soon. Bye now. And cut. Thank you so much for watching our video. We have so much fun making these, and we hope that you were both delighted and inspired by what you just watched. This video was sponsored by Cotton Cuts. Cotton Cuts is your one stop for all the best fabric and thread memberships. Love fabric? We've got you covered. Love thread? We've got you covered. We get that no two quilters are cut from the same cloth, which is why our memberships are as unique as you. We also have the largest block of the month in the world. Over 4,000 detectives solve our puzzle mystery quilts every year, and you can join them. Simply go to cottoncuts.com to learn more about all the awesome and fun things that we're doing. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to make sure you get all of our new fresh content every time it comes out. Thank you so much. Happy sewing enthusiasts, and we will see you soon. Bye now.